Well, good morning everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. All decorated up for Christmas, and I want to show you another version of Willy Lott's house at Flatford Mill, painted in midwinter with snow covering. It's the rear view. What I have here is a pencil drawing that I did some while ago of Willy Lott's house, but this is the rear view. If you remember a video that I did very recently of the front view of Willy Lott's house at Flatford Mill, and now I'm going to show you my version of the reverse view, which is that composition. As I say, the rear view of Willy Lott's house. As you can see, we've got the main build. I'm going to try and have some smoke coming out of the chimney. These trees will be white, and of course you've got white in the snow. We're going to have some snow on the roof. So that's basically the composition. So I'm going to put that down onto watercolour paper, and I'm going to show you how to paint that. Well, there's the subject in hand. Nice subject. That's the drawing, Willy Lott's. I'm working on a large sheet this morning. It's a 22 by 15, but I've put a tape around the outside just to purely frame it up when it's finished, really. So I'm going to lay the first washers down. I'm going to use these as the main brushes. It's a number 4 mop, it's a number 7 Colinsteedart sable, and a number 6 that points well, and a 1/2 inch flat. So those are my main brushes. Well, as I think I've probably said before, explained before, that normally when you're looking at a snow scene, sky normally looks somewhat darker than it would do on a summer's day. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put a really dark sky on. It's going to be dark blue. I'm going to use Windsor blue. You could use Prussian if you wish, but I prefer the Windsor. It's the red shade. There are two, I understand, and I'm going to add Indian red to that, and that will give me a nice deep dark blue. And here we go. Take a breath and away you go. Paint that on there. I'm going to produce the trees in a similar way to what I did last time. If you remember, I used the dry brush technique to get the feeling of snow on the trees. I'm trying to work with a bead of colour just hanging down. A bit more blue going in now. Just splashed my little Father Christmas, but he won't mind, I'm sure. There we go. And if you can keep that bead of paint on the edges, that will help immensely when you come to do the texture of the colour onto the trees. And I'm going to paint around the chimney pot like that. You always got to be aware that there is white paper involved when you're painting snow in a true watercolour. Not going to use any masking fluid, and there is a bit of depth to the snow here and there, so that's another thing you've got to be aware of. Good. Once you get to that depth, now we go in with the real deep stuff. While it's still wet, you can go in with the really deep stuff and plenty of Indian red, because that will give you a couple of tones within the sky, because not always is the sky the same tone right the way through. Then that dark colour can then be used to finish off the lower area, which is ideal because the darker you go, the lighter the snow will look. Well, that's the theory, and I'm all for theories. Quite often theories don't actually work out, but in this case I think it should. And we've got quite an undulating roof line there, bearing in mind we've got snow on there, so it doesn't have to be too perfect. And I'm going to take that little bead and pull that over there. I don't want that to lay too close to that. That's nice. Touch more red? Yeah, why not? Why not? Touch more red in the lower part of the sky, like that. Made that chimney a bit out of shape, but there you go. It's always a good idea not to be too fussy with your work, purely because we want a loose feel to the whole thing. And then as we come down into the lower area, this is where it gets interesting. There's a bit of depth to the distance there. So what I'm going to do for that, going to take quite a bit of moisture or colour off of the brush and just use that as my distant colour, still painting around the tree edges at this stage, and allow that to sink away into the distance like that. There we are. Now that's our real depth, and just to give a little bit of feel into that depth, I'm going to use my flat brush, lightly damped, just to lift away so we get some soft snow areas in the distance. So I'm lifting off that colour. So that's my soft snow area for the distance, and then we go dark again so we hit the lower area like that. There we are. So that's created a feel of depth immediately. Now, while I've got this flat brush, I'm lifting off a bit of colour here and there, like that, and I'm using that to pull in some colour into those trees. Remember this technique that I used to create the edges of trees? This time I'm doing it with a flat, but you could do it with that mop brush that you had. But either way, it's that lovely feeling of snow on the tops of the trees. Same here, just dragging that down, that little bead of paint, just drag that in. Just on that corner there, it can be a bit more solid at that point. Snow there, but gently pulling that in. Can even reload if you feel you need to, which I just did. Bring out the side of that. That's lovely. And that's the way you produce your trees. Then of course once you get down to the lower area, you can then go in hard again. I'm actually going to paint around that trunk area too, because this is more depth that we're trying to create here. So it's another area of snow that will always be useful. That's it, like that. Then there again, clean the brush, try and create a similar area to that. Doesn't necessarily want to be, actually don't think I will. I think I'll just drag some of that paint down. There we are. That's that. I think is sufficient. I'm not going to, because that is the most distant, this is not as distant, so let's just balance that up with that like that. That trunk will be widened. It looks a bit narrow at the moment. Good. And then finally this area here, which, because it's just drying, gives a slightly different texture to the corner of that building. Slightly different sort of shrub that sits there quite nicely. We'll finish the corner of that building shortly. And the lower area there, I need to just reload just a touch. There we go. And that's the way you start the painting of these lovely trees on the outer edge of this lovely scene. Now that's drying, gives me the opportunity to put some colour onto the building, and I'm just going to use light red. This is for the building itself with a little raw sienna. Got a little bit of blue in there, so a bit more light red, because it's got a cream feel. I'm going to have the main light coming from the left, so that will be slightly creamy, whether we can see that. So let's add a little bit more colour to that. I'll be too weak with this, but don't be too strong either. No, that's about right. Now I'm going to paint around the windows at this stage, and because it's a dull day, I want to show you how to get light into the windows. And I'll show you what I mean very shortly. There we are. This is all the frontage of the building. And I'm treating that very rough and loose, because I don't want that to show too brilliant. It's an old building. In the winter, it's you know, you've got to show that feel of age to it, really. Then as I come round the corner, I'm going to add a bit of blue to that, because in theory that is my shadow side. So a bit more blue, a bit more red, gives a slightly more muddy colour to that, which I think will work. Let's hope so. It's all paint and hope, which is, you know, a lot of people think artists just paint. Well, they do, and I'm talking all the time, but I'm also thinking ahead while I'm painting, which not that easy to do, as you can imagine, but there you go. So that is the building in its colour. Now, as I said before, I'm going to try and get a bit of light into the window areas. So what I'm going to do, I have a lot of people come to me after Christmas and say, I've got this lovely Christmas card that someone sent. I'd really love to know how to paint it. And if you look, they're not a bad way of learning to paint. Looking at Christmas cards, learning to actually paint snow scenes, really. Have a bash of window there. There we are. And that spreads across the snow. And the object of this will be seen, you know, you'll be able to see this, the reason for all of this, shortly. And that then spreads out onto the snow. Then you soften it. Now, may looks, you know, a little bit strange. Well, I suppose it is really, but this is the way you produce the feeling of warmth coming from those windows, which always works very well in a snow scene. Study your greetings cards. Now, while that's all completely dry, I'm going to put in the feel of a pathway here, because that also adds warmth to the whole thing. Starting off with burnt umber and a dryish brush for this, just going around there. It does go up to the door, and then there's another path that goes around the back. But this is all to be very impressionist, really. Then I'm using a bit of burnt sienna as it comes around the corner. There we are. See the way I'm modelling that with my finger as well. You know, sparkle. That's what we're looking for in watercolours. Sparkle. If you can get sparkle in the form of, yeah, let's bang some red in. There we are. Look at that. Look at that. I like that. No red there, but that really helps to show up the snow, I think. Yeah, I like the idea of that. A little bit more burnt umber or burnt sienna, either one, just to give some foreground perspective, really. That's what that does. Into the path running around the corner. There we are, look at that. Superb. So that's the start of the foreground track, leaving plenty of white paper. Now the windows in the first floor and that one there are going to have no light in them, right? So although it may be the daytime, at least in the winter you do need light sometimes, so that's why I've lit up those areas. But no lights in those rooms because no one there. Well, that's the theory. Bit of ultramarine, bit of Indian red to give me a blue feel. I just have to rest my hand for this. So this is the glazed areas, not the frame, because Flatford Mill, those of you that know Flatford will know that the windows are wood, so consequently they have dark frames basically. So that's the windows put in. Frames to go in later. Clean the brush again. Now we're looking for a nice bit of orange for the tile work. Now, where do we put the tile work? Well, I'm going to put some, not round the chimneys areas, purely because, for obvious reasons, you may have thinking about this, there we are, a little bit more red in there. You may have the fire going, which you probably would anyway, and consequently you wouldn't see any snow around those areas. So that's like that, where that chimney is. And you wouldn't see any snow there either. Reload the brush. Oh, and that runs straight along there because it sits behind that. Just a little bit there. There we are. So really, and down into the building. Notice I'm putting that in at the angle that it actually lays. That's good. So that's where we haven't got any snow, and maybe some little touches in the lower area too, here and there, just where the snow no longer lays. So the snowfall has been fairly recent. Yeah, that does it, I think. It's pretty much a snowy feel. And of course the chimneys need to go in now, and I'm going to add Indian red to that with a bit of the cadmium red. So it's Indian red, cadmium red, going to paint in the shadow side first, and this should show up quite nicely against as a warm colour against the snow. There we are, look at that. Perfect. There we are. Leave some little bits of sparkle on there. Alright, if we decide to make it look as if there's snow on there, well, there wouldn't be any sparkle, but there you go. So that's the roof basically. Just going to put a ridge tile in here, just a little bit of a ridge tile, just to separate like that. That's fine. Yep, good. Okay, let's sit back and have a look and see what we've done. Right, I'm going to paint in this tree first, and this is going to be quite simply burnt umber. Let's go into where the Windsor blue is, burnt umber and Windsor blue. That's all you really need. Fairly strong mix, to be fairly dark. A bit more Windsor. Don't want too much Windsor because it'll go green. Here we are. So we've got the main trunk coming down there like that. Going to show a little bit of snow onto the side of the trunk. Always, well, not always, but sometimes a good idea to do that. Just helps to give an impression that the snow is driven onto the trunk area a little bit. That's it, and the trunk goes into the ground like that. A little bit of drifting there. Then of course that goes up into the depth of the tree, where you sometimes see a branch or the main trunk, a bit of a branch coming off there, possibly there, one there, and of course then it threads off up into the smaller branches that there again appear here and there really. And be a bit careful where you don't put too many in. Some will appear in front of the snow areas, some will appear behind. Notice how it broke out of that snow area, as if there's a nice lot of snow onto that area of the trunk. Same there, another little area there. Got to make certain that we put in enough strength to our branches to suit the tree we've got, because if it's a thick trunk and small amount of branches, that never seems to work for me anyway. Or another branch come out there, another decent branch coming out there. Fill that up just a little bit more and shoot that out into the distance there like that. You'll see quite a few branches, but don't overdo this branch business. So easy to do that. Perhaps a small branch there in the lower area shooting off, and perhaps a few more just to justify the lighter area there. Here we are. So that's that tree negotiated. Burnt sienna now used. Dry brush effect. Trying to get the feel of snow, so leaving the white, bit of red there, just to bring the changes, but it's all to give the effect of snow. Look at that. You would not get it easier than that. It would not be easier than that. Same there. Now I'm doing the darker touches too, to that lower area, perhaps a little darker in that bottom right hand corner, maybe just to show up where the corner of that building comes, perhaps. We'll lose a bit of that with shadow. Then some nice strong burnt sienna this side, a bit more there, a bit more there, bit of strength there. See where I'm strengthening up the lower areas. Always a good thing to do to create that feeling of snow. Bushes that have not got any snow on, and yet the higher areas have. More of a shrub, so I'm just putting in this sort of textured feel before I do any shadows. Just the side of this small brush, really. Could be any brush, not desperate to denote a brush for this. Just a matter of the side of the brush, really, and the confidence to be able to go in and create the feeling like that. Let's just do this as well. These are the small twig areas that have no snow on them. There you go. That's actually in front of that, so we'll pull that down in front of that area. Look at that. You wouldn't get an easier way of painting a winter tree, really. Getting that all over effect of a winter tree. Let's just remove that. Well, we're not going to remove it, but we're going to put some deeper touches there. Put some deeper touches there. And some deeper touches there. There we are. That's balanced that all up quite nicely. We'll go with a nice deep touch there. There we are, look at that. Now that is what I would say not as difficult as you would have originally thought. Hopefully. Don't want that tree to stand all on its own there. Need some shrubbery around it. A little bit in the distance there. So, you know, you can't see the snow unless you see the white. You know, sorry, you can't see the white unless you see the brown. So there is a point where you do need to have enough dark colour of twig shapes left. Good. Let's allow that to dry. Now I've mixed burnt umber and ultramarine, and I'm going to paint in the window frames now. So we've got a frame across like that. We've got one there, and there's 1, 2, 1 across. And of course the sill, but the sill will have snow on. So that there again is always worth thinking about. Like that. Notice I've left some snow. So it's across there, down there, and underneath where the snow is, and then you go 1, 2, but don't go right down to the bottom. And all of a sudden you've got that lovely window, and then above that window we've got a beam there. Yep, that's the beam that we require, and on top of that is snow, of course. And then in the shadow areas we've got the feeling of window there, window there. See how that sharpens up the window, so you don't have to be too neat with your initial wash of colour, because now this is where the fun starts. Actually, the windows that have a little bit of light coming through. Look at those. See how they glow once you get the look how they glow. See where I'm even putting less of the colour onto that, less of the framework, to really try and get a glow in that area. Now this is a beam that runs across there, painted at Flatford Mill many times, so I do have some idea of what we're talking about here. And this is the door. So the door will come down like that, but I've gone up the top but not down the bottom as much, because there will be a feeling of light coming from those windows. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Just going to add a little bit of blue to that mix to paint in this door a little bit more, a little bit deeper in colour. That's better. That's got it. And it is beamed, so that works like that. Brilliant. Let's allow those to dry. Now I'm going to paint in the gutter, which will have downpipes, of course. Be very careful when you paint gutters in. Don't put them in too wide, because they never look right. Past experience has told me that that is the worst thing you can do. Break up that downpipe and don't put it right on the edge of the building. That's another thing that I've done in the past that hasn't quite worked. And we've got an old gutter there too, and that stands out the end. And of course we've got the downpipe here that lays like that and across, and away we go. Keep these not too wide. Stop to allow some impressions of clips there. Lovely. We're not far off of shadow work. Now it's shadow work time. I've mixed together cobalt blue and Indian red, my favourite mix for shadow work in snow shadow work, purely because it gives the desired effect. Now, light coming from the left, there will be shadow down there, like that. There will be shadow under the gutter, like that, as far as that area. And down, oh, that's it, yep, sorry, having to think about this. Down the right hand side of the downpipe, to show that that stands away from the window, the wall, sorry. And then I'm going to put in, this area will be in complete shadow. I'm going to leave that a second. Under the window areas, like that, possibly down the right hand side. See how that gives a lovely glow to those windows. I'm going to leave those. Just a touch under the sill, like that. A bit of sill there perhaps. Touch under the sill of those windows, like that. All makes the difference between a good window and a window that's not bad. Now that beam, let's put a bit of shadow on the windows themselves. Down the left and across the top, give that added bit of light, and also under that beam there. Always a good place to put shadows. Right, now let's bite the bullet and go in with a bit of light shadow into some of these snow areas, remembering where the light comes from. There we are. Look at that. Not everywhere, just here and there, a bit there. Lovely sparkle you get when you start putting shadows in. Look at that. Really is making that snow scene come alive, really. Now, because that's behind the building, very little sunlight there, so we've got to remember that the winter creates it's low sunlight, so very little in the way of sunlight. There we go. And that comes down, that shows the corner of that building, look. So use that to do that. Right, now add a little more water to that. Don't be too dark with this shadow on the side of this building. But basically there is one. So I'm sweeping across and down. Trying to keep that fairly smooth. That'll all spread gradually. Like that. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? There will be a little bit of shadow. The top there, perhaps the lower part of that roof. Like that. And all you need to do then is just soften it, because that shadow is not completely hard edged. Well, that's the difference between a hard edged shadow and a soft edged shadow. Okay, where else are we putting these shadows? Well, in the foreground, there will be a little shadow coming from the building, cast across there like that, right to the corner, but it's flowing like that. Okay, so that's good. There will be just a little shadow, or across the top of that door and down left hand side, will be just a little bit of shadow, not too much, showing across the path there, and that can be drawn with the finger. Look at that. And then all you do then, same old technique, is to soften the top. Look at that. So you soften that, and then you create a harder edge on the bottom. And that you create a lovely feel of a shadow running across there. I'm also going to put this tree casting a shadow into that. There we are, look at that. Down the side of that building, into that area there like that, creating that lovely soft atmospheric feel. Then of course another sweep of a shadow across this foreground where there's another tree that's creating a soft shadow, and there again I'm going to soften that. Just have some fun with these shadows. Shadows to me are the most important part of any scene. So, you know, if you can't have fun with a bit of shadow work, then really there's no chance of creating a good painting. And that's the way I see it. A little bit of shadow work on the edge of that track there, sweeping away. Certainly on the edge there where it turns down into the track area. We are. Brilliant. Softening some areas, leaving some areas hard. That there again is the key to creating good snow scenes. Good. Just one or two little dots there where we have that, like that. Look at that. Give that mystical feel to that door. Okay, let's allow that to completely dry. Well, the final thing we need to do is just those good old finishing touches, and they're going to be starting off with sort of like a reddy brown with a pointed brush. We've got the underside of that roof line there, because obviously there's no snow underneath where it sticks or hangs underneath. There we are. See how it sharpens that up. Where else are we going to have this? Let's have a bit of shadow sort of there. That's it, a bit of shadow there, just to help highlight that, the chimney area. We're going to put in some little grassy touches. Let's put in some little brown touches first, where we've technically got the track. Get rid of that. And also some little harder edges along this part of the track there. A little bit there, just rub that through. And two little touches as it goes, heads around the corner. All helps to give a bit of an edging to that track area. And also it heads round the corner that way, but of course it then comes back round to there, and this is where you can define where that goes in there, so where it goes into the door basically. There we are, and the edging there. So that's highlighted. It's sort of created a mystical feel at the bottom of that door. I think we're almost there, to be honest with you. Right, last thing, one final thing. A dark green, winter blue, cadmium yellow, bit of brown in there, because quite often when it's snowing you do see some little bits of greeny grass areas that stand out in amongst, like that. That's it, one or two little touches there, like that. That's it, there we are. See where that sweeps, it helps to show that track. One or two little grassy areas there. And what I mean by grassy areas is little spiky touches. And all you do, you don't have too many of these, but quite often you've got some little spiky areas, and then if you draw your finger across the base, see the way I did that? Let's do one here where it breaks into the light. Put a few spiky shapes like that, and then just draw your finger across, and all of a sudden, hey presto, you've got yourself a feeling of these little spiky sort of grasses that are standing up here and there. But of course you've got to watch that you don't overdo this. It's so easy once you learn a technique to actually overdo it, which I've been in danger of doing and have done many times. Good. I think that's pretty much as is, really. A couple of other little bits and pieces that Just add a little bit more of that red. I want to define the edge of those tiles a bit more than that, like that, like that, and quite often you see the edge of the tile, particularly where there's no snow, there, certainly along there, there's just a rough edge, sticks out. Good, that's perfect. A bit more brown now. I want to just show the step to the door. There we are, look at that. Pull that up, pull that across, and that then brings the door down into that track area. Perfect. There we are. Lovely jubbly. Okay, let's remove the surround and sign up. Well, there you have it. That's the rear of Willy Lott's house in the snow. Just going to sign the bottom left hand corner here. Yep, it's a little damp. No, that's okay. Just to make it mine. Then just going to show you how to create the feeling of smoke coming from the chimney. Take a flat brush like that. Which chimney? Well, I suppose it's not a bad idea to take that one, and you gently lift off colour like that. There we go. Just gently. Then once you get higher up, you then open up that feeling of smoke. Like that. And then it gets larger as it goes higher up, like that. And all of a sudden you've got that lovely feeling of smoke rising from what is a very large chimney breast, and that, I'm sure, has not been seen for a number of years, smoke rising from Willy Lott's house. But just give a sense that there's a bit of a breeze going from left to right, so I'm losing a bit of colour on the right hand side. That makes it so it's not completely coming in that area. There we go. Well, that's Willy Lott's house, the rear view. Just going to show you now how to add a couple of pheasants. So I'm bringing you nice and close in. I'm going to have one here, which is pecking away. Like that. And then all we do then is put in some shadow to justify the sunlight. And there they are, a couple of pheasants pecking away in the rear of Willy Lott's cottage. And in the meantime, happy painting and stay safe.